Listen closely to this. The moment you stop chasing, and give yourself the space to breathe, that is exactly when you begin to rise. You don't need to shout to be noticed. You don't need to be everywhere to prove your worth. All you need is to step back, gently, quietly, and your absence will start to speak for you. And the miracle is, people will begin to feel it more clearly than ever before. In the space you leave behind, people suddenly begin to see you more clearly. They realize just how much they once took your presence for granted. Maybe they assumed you'd always be there, ready to help, to listen, to share, to sacrifice. They thought you had nothing more urgent to do, nothing more important than pleasing them. But when you stop showing up, when you no longer respond to every message right away, when you stop saying yes to every invitation, when you go quiet and step away from that invisible cycle, that's when you become rare. Your value begins to rise in their eyes, not because you changed, but because they never truly saw you in the first place. The issue was never you. The issue lies in how you once treated your own time and energy. You gave too much, too easily, too quickly, to the point where you yourself forgot that your time should be honored like any other precious asset. Look closely. Time is the one thing in this life that cannot be bought back. Every second that passes is a piece of your life permanently gone, unrecoverable, irreversible. And yet, how many times have you given away your time as if it had no value at all? You traded your precious hours just to fulfill a casual favor, to please people who didn't even care how you felt afterward. The world will treat your time exactly as you treat it. If you're always available, always saying yes, always bending yourself to please everyone, then people will assume you have nothing more important to do. They'll call you whenever they need, interrupt your schedule without asking whether you're okay. Not because they're bad people, but because you unintentionally taught them that through your silence, your tolerance, your unconditional presence that you gave for so many years. You're the one who set that standard without realizing it. You're the one who made them comfortable with the idea that they could interrupt your day at any time, pull you into their problems, ask for your help, rarely checking if you needed anything in return. And if this continues, you'll find yourself drained. Not because you're weak, but because you've been filling every cup around you and forgetting to refill your own. That's why it's time for you to step back. Not to retaliate, not to draw attention, but so you can finally hear yourself again. So you can take a moment to reflect. If you're giving your time to everyone else, what's left for you? Where are your dreams? Where have your goals gone? Does your inner peace still exist? Or has it been pushed aside by nameless schedules? Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your life. Not everyone should have the privilege to walk into your space and time whenever they want. You need to learn the difference between kindness and self-erasure. You need to understand your time is a privilege, not an obligation. And saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you wise. It shows that you're mature enough to set boundaries and strong enough to protect them. The better you become at guarding your time, the more you attract relationships and opportunities that match your true worth. Take a closer look. The people you're spending time with, do they really reciprocate fairly? Or do they just come, take, and leave, leaving you with a sense of emptiness and being unappreciated? It is not wrong to crave balance. It is not selfish to want your giving and receiving to be mutual. If someone does not respect your time, they do not respect you. So why do you keep opening the doors of your life to them every single day? The strange thing is, when you start valuing your time, others begin to notice. They realize you're no longer easy to access. They know they can't just demand you to drop everything just because they need you. And within that tightening of access, they begin to respect you more. The moments you are present become more valuable because you are no longer there all the time. They begin to treasure your presence precisely because they've once felt the absence of it. However, the most important change is not from them, it's from you. When you stop giving your time away unconsciously, you begin to rebuild your relationship with yourself. You regain control. You spend that time on what makes you feel alive, on growth, on passion, on your personal happiness journey. You no longer live to please everyone, but to build a life you genuinely love. Think of time as an invisible bank account. Every minute that passes is a withdrawal. If you're not careful, you'll fall into overdraft, nothing left to give, no more energy to move forward. But when you spend your time intentionally, you begin to feel more grounded. You become more aware, more focused, and most importantly, you live with greater meaning. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to chase to be kept. All you need is to step back at the right moment, and your true value will speak for you. You can lose money and earn it back. You can lose your reputation and rebuild it. But there is one thing that, once lost, will never return, and that is time. There is no asset more precious than time, no unit more valuable than every second you are living. And the sad truth is, most of us have given away this asset unconsciously, wasting it on meaningless conversations, one-sided relationships, unnecessary invitations, and actions that bring nothing positive to our lives. If you had only 24 units of money in your bank account each day, wouldn't you think twice before spending it? Then why do you spend your 24 hours as if they had no value? Time makes no sound, yet it leaks from your hands every single day. And the dangerous part is, it doesn't give any warning signs when you're wasting it on the wrong people, the wrong things, or the wrong direction. It simply flows by quietly. And one day, when you sit down and reflect, you'll be startled to realize how many months, how many years you've dropped into things that truly didn't matter. And what's most frightening is this: most people will treat your time exactly the way you've treated it. If you're always available, always saying sure, always showing up no matter how urgent your own needs are, they will assume you have nothing more important to do. They will call on you whenever they want, and gradually they will forget that you too are a human being with a schedule, with limits, with a need to rest. You are the one teaching others how to treat your time. No one automatically devalues your time unless you've given it away too easily. You've canceled your own appointments to help them. You've stayed up late fixing something they asked. You've postponed your plans just to lend an ear when they needed to vent. And then you wonder, why do I feel exhausted? Why don't others appreciate me? The answer may sting, but it is necessary, because you didn't appreciate your own time to begin with. And you taught them that your time didn't matter, and they merely learned the lesson you unintentionally gave away. Starting today, you must rewrite that lesson. Begin by seeing time as a precious currency, where every passing second is a non-refundable withdrawal. You cannot keep giving without setting limits. You cannot leave your door open all day just to satisfy every knock on your life. Imagine if the bank of life only granted you 24 hours per day, and at midnight it resets, with no way to store what you didn't use. Would you so easily toss away those hours just to live according to someone else's expectations? Learn to spend your time consciously. Before agreeing to anything, pause for a few seconds and ask, is this truly important? Does it serve my goals, my values, or my peace? If not, allow yourself the right to say no. You don't have to attend every meeting. You don't have to respond to every message immediately. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone for why you're not available. You have the right to protect your time without feeling guilty. This won't be easy at first. You may feel like you're losing connections, afraid that people will think you're cold or arrogant. But you're not here to please everyone. You are here to build a purposeful life, one where your time is invested in the right people, the right activities, the right goals. And once you truly begin doing that, you'll be surprised. You can accomplish more in the same amount of time. You'll feel greater clarity about your direction, and you'll breathe deeper because you're living on a schedule you chose, not one imposed by others. Time is an asset, but more importantly, it is a reflection of your self-respect. When you value your time, you are telling the world that you know your own worth. When you say no to what's unnecessary, you're sending out an unspoken message. I have important things to do. I am living with purpose. I am not here to serve unconditionally for everyone. And the strange thing is, when you begin treating time like the valuable asset it is, others will change the way they approach you. They will schedule in advance. They will ask for permission before requesting help. They will think carefully before interrupting you or pulling you into a matter, because you've shown them your time has value. It's no longer something just anyone can take, use, and discard. Of course, there will always be people who don't understand. They'll say you've changed. They'll be upset that you're no longer as easygoing as before. But that's not your problem. That's their lesson to learn. The lesson that you're no longer the old version of yourself, the one who chased after approval, who always came last. Now, you are someone who understands that time is not infinite, and you will no longer trade it away, especially not for things that do not nourish your heart. So today, right now, begin rewriting the way you use your time. Look at each passing hour and ask, am I investing or wasting? Remember this, every second you live is a part of your life you'll never get back. So give it only to what truly deserves it. There is something no one can see with their eyes or touch with their hands, yet it determines how others treat you, and that is your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls you build to isolate yourself from the world. They are invisible fences that protect your peace, your self-respect, and your personal worth. When you don't set boundaries, people don't know where to stop. When you have no limits, people don't realize when they've gone too far. And when you silently endure, they assume you accept it. You cannot blame others for hurting you if you've never said, I don't accept that. In most relationships, whether family, work, or love, the lack of boundaries is not a sign of sacrifice, but a sign of loss. Loss of time, loss of energy, loss of how others perceive you. Because when you're always lenient, always accommodating, always forgiving, you don't make people love you more. You only make them accustomed to taking advantage of your silence. Kindness without boundaries is mistaken for obligation. Compassion without limits is seen as weakness. And people will keep pushing, not necessarily out of malice, but because they think you allow it. Because you've never shown them that you have the right to say no, the right to disagree, the right to walk away from situations that harm your inner well-being. Understand this simple truth. Boundaries are the clearest expression of self-respect. When you set boundaries, you are saying, I know my worth. I respect myself. I will not allow anyone to cross this line, not even those I love. Not because you are arrogant, but because you understand. If you don't protect yourself, no one else will do it for you. And if you don't teach others how to respect you, they will treat you however they see fit, even if it causes you pain. It's easy to want to help. We're wired to feel needed when someone relies on us. Being called upon, being asked, being depended on sometimes makes us feel valued. But the truth is, true value doesn't come from always being available. It comes from knowing what is right for you and what is not. When you spend time on things that exceed your limits, you are borrowing time from your own life. And the price you pay is unfulfilled dreams, chronic exhaustion, and the feeling of being taken for granted without daring to speak up. At first, this will make you feel guilty. You'll think you're being selfish. You'll fear upsetting people. But soon you'll realize the world doesn't fall apart just because you say no. On the contrary, your world starts to gain order, clarity, and breathability. You are no longer pulled in all directions by invitations, by social pressure, by other people's expectations. You begin to choose deliberately. What is worth your time? Who is worth your energy? And it is in that moment that you begin to live your own life, not a life dictated by someone else's calendar. From there, your relationships also begin to shift. Those who were used to your always being there will pause. They will start to see you differently. They may not be pleased, but they will learn to respect you. Because respect doesn't come from constant presence, it comes from clearly drawn boundaries. And when you do this, you also inspire those around you to learn how to love themselves properly. Not by pleasing everyone, but by knowing what must never be compromised. In the end, you must understand, boundaries do not block love, they make love healthy. A relationship without boundaries is fragile, harmful, and easily broken. But a relationship with boundaries is a mature one, where both people are allowed to be themselves, to speak their truths, and to live according to their inner needs without fear of judgment. So starting today, allow yourself to rebuild the fence around your heart, your mind, and your time, not to push people away, but to make sure only the worthy ones can enter. And you'll see, your inner peace is no longer invaded, your self-respect no longer eroded, and your value is protected, not by shouting, not by proving anything, but simply by knowing where the line is and having the courage to uphold it. There are things you will never be able to see clearly if you stand too close. There are relationships, emotions, and situations that only become more blurred and tangled the harder you try to hold on. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is not to stay, not to explain, not to change someone, but to take a few steps back, to observe from a distance that is far enough, clear enough. Distance is not rejection. Distance does not mean you don't care, don't love, or don't want to continue. Distance is the mature act of someone who begins to understand that clarity does not come from proximity, but from stepping back at the right time. When you stop being present all the time, when you stop reacting immediately, when you stop engaging in tiring, repetitive conversations, that's when the vague starts to take shape. Why do you need distance? Because when you're too close to something, it's easy to justify what's not right. It's easy to overlook the scratches in someone's behavior, to reassure yourself that maybe I'm too sensitive, they didn't mean it, things will get better. You get swept into the emotional spiral and lose the objectivity to ask yourself, am I truly being respected? Am I being hurt? Am I losing myself in this relationship? Distance is the antidote to emotional blindness, not for escape, but for deeper clarity. When you withdraw your presence, you give others a rare opportunity, the chance to realize you're no longer there. That's when they begin to feel your absence. Not because you want them to, but because they never realized how used they had become to your presence, treating it as a given. The moment you stop sending morning texts, stop checking in frequently, stop saying yes to every request, that silence echoes strangely in their hearts. And within that space, your value begins to be felt, clearly, quietly, but with weight. You don't need to disappear to be remembered. But sometimes, just enough silence prompts others to ask themselves, have I been taking this person for granted? Have I treated their presence as a default? Have I only been receiving without ever giving? These questions cannot arise if you're always there, always available, always present, because people often only begin to appreciate what they can no longer easily hold. Distance, even just a little, is enough to awaken a dormant awareness in others. But the most wonderful thing is this. Distance not only clarifies others, it clarifies you. When you step back, you begin to see yourself more clearly. You recognize the things you once overlooked. You see the times you stayed silent for fear of upsetting someone. You remember the moments you didn't feel heard but still pretended you were fine. You begin to distinguish clearly between a relationship that helps you grow and one that makes you shrink, and you realize it is your absence that gives you the chance to return to your true presence. Distance does not destroy good relationships. On the contrary, it strengthens what is solid and exposes what only survived because of one-sided compliance. Those who truly value you will reach out, will make the effort, will not let you fade away without doing something. On the other hand, those who were used to you always initiating, always yielding, will let you go without looking back. And you will see, distance doesn't make you lose anyone. It simply reveals who is really there to stay. This may hurt. No one wants to admit that some people only stay when we're the ones trying. But it's a necessary truth, a sobering moment that forces you to grow up. You can't keep relationships alive through endurance and one-sided effort. You can't always be the one fixing, the one listening, the one initiating. It's time for you to step back, not because you've stopped loving, but because you've learned how to love yourself first. Distance is not the end sometimes. It is the beginning of a new balance. It is when you give others time to reflect and yourself the time to recover. Because you too need healing. You too need to be understood, to be appreciated, to be treated as a human being with emotions and limits. And you'll realize that distance doesn't make you weaker. It is a quiet but powerful declaration that I deserve clarity, kindness, and a love that doesn't ask me to trade pieces of myself. Distance is a form of language that needs no words. It sends a clear message. I will no longer remain in places where I am fading. I will no longer offer my presence where it is taken for granted. I will no longer keep trying when all I receive in return is silence, indifference, or exploitation. And if someone doesn't understand that, they are not worthy of keeping you. In the end, distance not only clarifies who is sincere, it clarifies what you truly need. When you step out of the cycle of unconditional giving, you can hear your heart's voice more clearly. You begin to rewrite your story, not by trying to hold someone else back, but by holding on to yourself. And that is the true turning point of every transformation journey. There is a kind of language that requires no words, no raised voices, no arguments, yet it holds more influence than any reasoning. And that is silence. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, to react, to prove themselves right, choosing to remain silent is sometimes the greatest display of inner strength. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is the choice of those strong enough not to be dragged into things unworthy of their energy and inner peace. We are often taught to speak up, to defend our viewpoints, to prove our worth through words. But the truth is, not everything needs a response. Not every accusation needs justification. Not every condescending glance deserves a reply. There will be moments when you face injustice, are misunderstood, or wrongly judged. And your instinct will be to speak up, to clarify, to protect your image. But you must know this. Timely silence can say everything. Through your composure, your dignity, and your value that needs no defense. When you choose silence, you are not the loser. You are the one who has conquered yourself. You refuse to step into arguments that only bring exhaustion. You refuse to trade your inner peace for the fleeting satisfaction of speaking your mind. You understand that every time you react, you are handing a piece of your energy to someone else, and not everyone deserves that. In some conversations, withdrawal is the most powerful response. In some situations, saying nothing is the loudest message you can send. Silence is a way to keep yourself grounded in the eye of the storm. When others intentionally try to hurt you, when insults are thrown like daggers, when you feel cornered into defending yourself, silence becomes the shield of the self-respecting. It gives you space to see your emotions clearly. It gives you time to separate what truly matters from what is just a reflex. And most importantly, it gives you the right to choose, to respond with wisdom, not with impulse. Silence forces others to face their own behavior. When you don't react, you deny them the opportunity to pull you into the chaos they created. You don't feed the flames of anger. You don't become a part of the battle they're hoping for. Instead, you make them sit with the echo of your silence, something many are too afraid to face. Silence, when it stems from clarity and strength, can make people reflect more deeply than any argument ever could. Sometimes we are swept up in the need to respond to everything. A careless word, a disrespectful gesture, a hurtful act, all can trigger an immediate need to retaliate. But reacting is not always wise, because if you are constantly driven by others' behavior, you are handing over the steering wheel of your life. A truly strong person knows when to speak and when to remain silent to protect their inner equilibrium. Silence does not mean you don't see, don't know, or don't feel. On the contrary, It is because you see too clearly and feel too deeply that you choose silence to avoid destroying the peace you fought so hard to preserve. A mature person does not need to win every argument. They need the clarity to choose the battles worth fighting, and sometimes true victory is when you can walk away from a toxic situation while keeping your kindness, your composure, and your self-respect intact. Silence is also a gentle yet firm form of refusal. It is your way of saying, I don't want to continue this conversation in this manner. It is how you set boundaries without shouting. And sometimes that silence causes the other person to step back, to reevaluate their behavior, to wonder why you no longer respond the way you used to. Because when you no longer feel the need to speak, you've entered a different realm of inner power, where you no longer need to be understood to know your own worth. In relationships, silence can be a test. When you stop being the one who initiates, who maintains the connection, who always makes peace, you will see who truly cares and who is only there for convenience. And when you choose silence instead of chasing, you are sending a message. I am worth holding on to. And if I have to be the only one preserving this bond, perhaps it is not worth preserving. No one can go far if they must respond to everything. No one can stay clear-headed if they're reacting to every challenge life throws their way. Silence gives you space to observe, to listen to your intuition, to choose your response carefully rather than act on emotion. And in that space is where wise decisions are born. Silence is the evidence of a well-trained inner world, a person who no longer needs to raise their voice to demonstrate their strength. Remember, strength is not in how much you speak. It is in knowing when to speak and when to hold back. In a noisy world, those who know how to be silent at the right time are the ones people end up listening to the most. Because they have nothing to prove, their calm presence is already the clearest answer. Silence does not mean you are weak. It means you are strong enough not to let yourself be pulled into meaningless battles. You are deep enough to choose peace over winning. And you have enough self-respect to know that not everything deserves your response. We've grown far too used to trying to be seen. In conversations, we push our words forward to prove we're right. In relationships, we struggle to hold our place so we won't be forgotten. In social life, we constantly post, share, speak up, just to remind the world, I exist. But the more we strive for attention, the more empty we feel. Because the attention you gain by forceful effort never truly nourishes your inner value. Attention is not as valuable as presence with quality. And you don't need to chase the light when you already are a source of light yourself. There are people who don't speak much, don't show off, don't feel the need to speak up constantly, yet every time they are present, others listen. Because they don't seek recognition, they live in a way that makes recognition come to them. They let their true value speak for them. And that is something you can do too once you step away from the race to win outside attention and return to the core within yourself. The most exhausting thing is not being unseen. It's having to constantly strain yourself just to stay in the line of sight. That feeling of needing to always be impressive, always prove yourself, always show up at the right moment, can drain you without you even noticing. And one day you'll realize the people you tried so hard to impress don't actually care about you. They only remember you when you're loud. When you go quiet, they forget. And that's when you need to understand. If you have to shout to be heard, maybe you're in the wrong place. The attention you seek from others is only worthwhile if it comes willingly, from true connection, from genuine resonance. If you have to act, to strain, to trade pieces of your authentic self for a glance, a like, a word of praise, then you're slowly erasing yourself. That's not success. That's disappearing inside a fabricated shell. Stopping the pursuit of attention doesn't mean living closed off or rejecting connection. It simply means you no longer beg for recognition once you've recognized yourself. When you stop screaming for someone to look your way, you begin to realize the quiet inside you holds a very unique gravity. And the interesting thing is, when you no longer strive to be noticed, you start becoming impossible to ignore. People are often drawn to things that aren't overly displayed. Someone who doesn't try to impress can be the most intriguing. Someone who doesn't talk much makes others lean in when they do speak. Someone who doesn't chase the spotlight often commands the greatest presence when they step into it. Because magnetism doesn't come from noise, it comes from inner power. That inner power is built from knowing yourself, from the values you don't broadcast but live with every day, from the kindness you don't advertise but anyone who's touched by it remembers, from not needing to compete for space because you're standing firm on your own path. That is how you let yourself speak first, not through volume, but through substance. You don't need to grab attention. You need to live in a way that when someone happens to see you, they can't look away. Not because of appearance, but because of the steadiness, the clarity, the peace that radiates from you. You don't need to shout, "Look at me." You just need to quietly do your work well. Live true to your values. Walk with the posture of someone who doesn't need to be accepted to feel valuable. And that very lack of effort makes people unable to ignore you. Instead of seeking attention, invest in inner clarity. Ask yourself each day, what am I living in alignment with? Am I acting in ways that make me proud? Do I feel enough even when no one applauds me? Because someone who lives in alignment with their values will always shine in their own way, even in darkness. And others, sooner or later, will feel that light if they are truly worthy of being in your life. The hardest part isn't getting people to notice you. It's not losing yourself when they don't. When you learn to see your own worth without needing confirmation from anyone else, you stop being dependent on others' reactions to define who you are. And when you walk into the world with that kind of energy, you'll attract exactly those who are meant for you, those who don't come because you tried to shine, but because they saw the real light within you. Stopping the search for attention is not a journey of turning your back on the world. It's a journey of accepting that you are already enough, whether the world notices or not. And from that fullness, you will be seen by the truest kind of eyes, not those drawn by force, not those captured by chase, but those connected to you through real soul-to-soul presence. There's a familiar image many of us have lived through, chasing someone. A relationship, an opportunity, a glance. As if only by holding on to that thing could we feel our own worth. We strive endlessly to please, to be acknowledged, to not be left behind. We believe that if we try just a bit harder, become a bit better, a bit kinder, then that person, that world, that opportunity will turn around and choose us. But the truth is, true worth doesn't come from whom you pursue. It comes from your calm readiness to become someone who's chosen, naturally. The moment you feel the need to constantly prove your worth is the moment you enter a race with no finish line. The more you run, the more they step back. The more you hold on, the farther they drift. Because anything you have to force to keep will eventually slip away. Not because you're not good enough, but because what's right for you will never require you to sacrifice your dignity. What belongs to you will recognize you. When you live as you truly are, without changing yourself to please anyone, you were not born to be someone begging to be chosen. You were born to be someone who knows their own value and patiently waits for connection to flow both ways. When you know who you are, you don't need to become something else just to stay in someone else's story. Because you understand this. If they can't see the light in you, then no matter how brightly you shine, they will still close their eyes. And if someone truly sees you, you won't need to convince them. There's a truth that awakens us after years of chasing. When you stop playing the role of the chaser, you naturally step into the role of the one who is chosen. You don't need to run toward anything. You remain still, but not passive. You remain still in your fullness. You don't need to fight for attention. Your quiet presence alone is enough to draw in those who are worthy, because confidence doesn't come from noise. It comes from the calm energy of someone who has learned how to love themselves rightly. When you chase, you unintentionally send a message that says, I'm not enough. I need you to choose me. I need your validation to feel worthy. And people sense that. They won't try, won't invest, won't value, because they know you'll always be the one to initiate, to hold on first, to stay first, to ask to remain. And so the balance in the relationship starts to fracture. The connection becomes a performance where one person is always trying and the other is allowed to stay lazy. On the other hand, the one who knows when to stop is the one who creates value through their absence. You don't need to argue to justify your place. You step back and let the other person decide. Do they see enough value in you to reach back? If not, you walk away. Not angrily, not bitterly, not with resentment. Just one quiet step, full of self-respect. And if someone realizes your worth through that absence, they'll return, but this time with different energy, more respectful, more mature, more sincere. Stopping the chase doesn't mean giving up on love. It means loving the right way, starting with yourself. When you stop chasing others, you begin chasing your dreams, your peace, and the purpose of your own life. You no longer sit around waiting for a message, hoping for recognition, feeling sad when you're ignored. Instead, you fill those spaces by improving yourself, elevating your way of living, and sowing beauty into your own soul. And then the miracle happens. The fullness within you begins to generate a unique magnetic pull. You no longer need anyone to make you feel important. You move with certainty in your breath, your decisions, your steps. You don't run after others' gazes. You focus on your own path and feel proud of the journey. And in that moment, true relationships begin to appear. Not because you tried to be loved, but because you were fully yourself, and that was too powerful to be overlooked. We were not made to beg for attention. We were not born to compete for supporting roles in someone else's life. We are here to live in alignment with our inner truth. And those who are truly worthy will see that, they will come, they will choose you. And you won't need to trade your dignity or self-worth to receive it. You don't need to be impressive. You only need to be authentic. You don't need to force yourself to fit. You just need to live true and let the rest arise from natural resonance, because lasting connection isn't born from the desperation to be chosen. It comes from two souls recognizing each other amid the noise of life. Stop playing the chaser, not because you're tired, but because you deserve more than that. Walk as if you are already the chosen one, not because you begged for it, but because you've lived true enough, deep enough, to be chosen naturally. And if someone doesn't see you, remember, real light never needs to prove itself. It shines on its own. No one can give you self-respect. No compliment, no admiring glance, no title or external validation can truly make you feel worthy if deep down you don't believe it yourself. Self-respect is not something you stumble upon along the road of life. It is something you have to build, little by little, through your own experiences, through every time you stand back up after failure, every time you say no to what doesn't deserve you, every time you say no to what doesn't deserve you, every time you choose yourself instead of pleasing the world. Self-respect is not a gift. It is the result of growth. We grow up hearing lessons like be humble, be agreeable, live for others. But sometimes those very lessons, if misunderstood, lead us to equate humility with lowering ourselves, kindness with enduring mistreatment, and being agreeable with constantly yielding to disrespect. And little by little, we learn to set aside our self-respect just to be called sweet, gentle, or lovable. But there's one undeniable truth. No one will truly respect you if you haven't learned how to respect yourself. Self-respect is when you dare to keep your promises to yourself, when you set a goal and pursue it without needing applause, When you walk away from a place where you are undervalued, even if you still love it. When you don't need to shout to be heard because you know your presence is already whole and worthy, even in silence. Self-respect is when you choose to act with kindness, not for praise, but because that's your standard for living. When you know you're capable of more and don't need anyone's permission to begin. Someone with self-respect will never accept less than what aligns with their true worth, not because they're arrogant, but because they know anything that doesn't build them up is slowly shrinking them. Self-respect doesn't come from being better than others. It comes from not needing to be better than anyone and still feeling enough, and that creates a confidence that can't be replicated. Confidence that doesn't need performance, doesn't need competition, doesn't need validation. It only needs rightful presence, a steady spine, and the ability to meet your own gaze in the mirror without flinching. But to build self-respect, you must pass through many layers within yourself. You will have to confront the times you let others cross your boundaries because you didn't dare to stop them. You'll recall moments you stayed silent in the face of hurt just because you were afraid of losing someone. You'll have to face the truth that there were times you diminished yourself just to keep a relationship that wasn't worth keeping. And from those scars, if you are brave enough to look closely, you'll begin to lay the first bricks of real self-respect. Self-respect is not something you declare. It's something you show through action. It's when you refuse to wear a mask to be loved, when you don't pretend just to be kept, when you don't smile when inside you're breaking, just to avoid making someone else uncomfortable. A person with self-respect chooses truth over convenient. They know when it's time to leave, and they don't need to make a scene. They are silent, but their silence is a choice, not helplessness. They refuse to play games that require them to shrink because they understand anything that demands they sacrifice their dignity isn't worth continuing. Self-respect isn't perfection. It allows you to make mistakes, but doesn't allow you to stay trapped in them. Self-respect is when you fall and don't stay on the ground for too long. You get up, adjust your posture, and keep walking, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to prove to yourself that you weren't born to stay broken forever. Every time you overcome an old limitation within you, you make your self-respect a little stronger, and that becomes the solid foundation from which you'll never need outside validation again. Self-respect also doesn't mean you're so strong you don't need anyone. On the contrary, a person with true self-respect knows how to choose the right people to need and the right moments to open up. They're not closed off. They're selective. They're not cold. They understand the value of their emotions, and because of that, they never stay too long in places where they are not respected, not heard, not seen for who they really are. Building self-respect is a long journey. There will be days you doubt yourself, days you want to return to your old self, the one who was comfortable for others, even if it meant hurting yourself. But if you stay patient, if you keep telling yourself, I deserve better, then every small action you take each day will slowly lift you. And one day, you'll look back and realize you no longer need anyone to define you. You no longer need to please to be kept. You no longer fear being left behind because you now know you are not replaceable and you never need to beg anyone for your worth. There is a kind of strength that is not loud, not flashy, and doesn't need applause. Yet it leaves others speechless when they finally recognize it. It's the strength of someone who knows how to choose silence when misunderstood, who knows how to create distance when no longer respected, who knows how to step back, not because they're giving up, but because they refuse to keep wasting energy on things no longer worthy. True inner strength doesn't come from raising your voice to defend yourself, but from knowing when to protect your peace, even when you have every reason to be angry. Silence and distance, when chosen consciously, are not acts of escape. They are a quiet declaration that says, I don't need to react to prove anything. I don't need to stay to preserve something that has already lost its fairness. I don't need to be present everywhere just to be valued, because you've learned one thing. The stillness within you is more precious than any half-hearted presence from the outside. Maybe you were once the person who always explained, always tried to keep the peace, always willing to maintain a relationship even when you were the only one trying. But then comes a moment when you realize not everything needs an explanation. Not every relationship is worth saving, and not every effort will make things better. Sometimes stepping back is the only action that can save you from the slow erosion caused by what is quietly diminishing you. When you choose silence, you're not choosing weakness, you're choosing clarity. You allow yourself to step out of the noise, away from the pressure to respond, away from the battle others want to pull you into. In that quiet space, you are no longer a victim of impulsive emotion, no longer reacting just to satisfy the other person. Instead, you observe, you feel, you decide from a deeper place, a place where your inner voice becomes clearer than ever. And it is in that place that your inner strength begins to speak, not through words, but through the energy you radiate. Distance works the same way. It is not a rejection of love. On the contrary, distance is the most natural and accurate test of any relationship. When you step back a few paces, you'll see who chooses to step forward. When you stop initiating messages, you'll see who genuinely cares. When you pause, you'll see who pauses with you and who keeps going as if you never existed. Distance doesn't change the nature of others. It only reveals what was already there, hidden behind your constant presence. Silence and distance help you see clearly, not just others, but also yourself. You realize there are places you once strained to stay in that no longer suit you. People you once considered everything may have only seen you as a temporary option, and pains you thought needed to be talked through may actually dissolve on their own with enough stillness and space. That isn't magic, it's resilience. Someone with inner strength knows that not every battle needs to be won. There are things you don't need to explain because your silence already speaks enough. There are times you step back, not because you are wrong, but because you choose clarity over being right, because you've realized there are arguments where the price is your peace, and nothing in this world is worth exchanging for your inner calm. The choice of silence and distance also brings you back to yourself, where healing begins. You start caring for yourself instead of constantly trying to fix external cracks. You no longer scatter your energy trying to explain, control, or hope for others to change. You turn all your focus inward, to heal, to restore, to grow, and one day you'll realize you no longer need someone to understand you because you come to understand yourself deeply. When you go silent, you make others hear what they once overlooked. When you create distance, you make others ask why that space feels so heavy. And if they are sincere enough, they will come forward with intention, with awareness, with a respect they once forgot. And if they don't, then that is not your loss. Because those who didn't appreciate you when you were still there will never deserve you once you are strong enough to walk away. You don't need to scream to be heard, don't need to cling to be kept. Timely silence is the most powerful response. Timely distance is the clarity you deserve. And true strength doesn't come from controlling others, it comes from controlling yourself, staying steady in the very moments that could shake you the most. Let your silence echo like a quiet strength that needs no words. Let the distance you create be the boundary of respect you grant yourself. And always remember, when you are strong enough to choose silence and step back, you are also strong enough to attract only what truly aligns with the inner power you possess. There are moments when you don't need to do anything to change how others see you. You just need to withdraw. No noise, no announcement, no blame. You simply step away quietly from a place where you once gave too much. And then, in the very space you leave behind, everything begins to shift. Those who once took you for granted start to feel the emptiness. Relationships that always saw you as the one who's always there begin to recognize the void. Your absence, at times, is a far more powerful reminder than anything you ever said in presence. We often tend to try hard to be acknowledged while we're still around. We give, we sacrifice, we accommodate, we stay patient, all in hopes that someone will finally see our worth. But then we realize constant presence can make people blind. When you're always there, always responding, always helping, always available, they stop seeing it as a gift. They start treating it as an obligation. And suddenly you go from being a blessing to being a default. They forget that your presence is not their right, it's your choice. That's why you must learn how to withdraw. Not to punish anyone, but to give others the chance to realize you are not a permanent fixture in their lives if they don't appreciate you. Let them feel your absence, so that if they truly hold you in their hearts, they will return with a different attitude. And if they don't, at the very least, you have freed yourself from the role of maintaining a one-sided relationship. There's a quiet yet piercing truth. When you're no longer there, people finally start to listen. They hear the silence you've left behind in their lives. The things you once did silently, the daily check-ins, the careful care, are now empty spaces no one else fills. And they begin to miss you. Not your image, but your essence. The feeling of being cared for without asking. The feeling of being understood without explaining. The feeling of having someone always willing who now has vanished as if they never existed. But the most important part isn't how they feel. It's who you become in that absence. When you stop staying in places no longer deserving of you, you reclaim the energy to build a better version of yourself. You no longer check your phone every hour, no longer wait for messages someone has forgotten to send. You no longer drain your mind trying to figure out where you stand in someone's heart. Instead, you use that time to develop yourself, to nourish your peace, to invest in relationships that are genuine. And in that moment, you're no longer the one left behind. You are the one moving forward. Your absence is not a void. It is a reconstruction. You are resetting the rules. Who gets to be near you? Who is kind enough to deserve a place in your life? You no longer give so freely as before. Every moment, every act of listening, every decision to stay now becomes a carefully chosen gift, because you've learned that your presence is a gift, and only those who know how to treasure it should receive it. You might fear they won't notice. You might worry they'll forget you. But ask yourself, if they can forget you that easily, were you ever truly held by sincerity? Your leaving is never a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it proves that you are strong enough to stop instead of continuing to pour yourself into a place that never knew how to receive you. And then the unexpected happens. Everything starts to change. The one who once ignored you begins to pause. The one who once was cold begins to remember. The one who thought you'd never leave now faces a void they can't fill. Maybe they won't say it aloud, but you'll feel it. Their gaze has changed. Their words are more cautious. Their demeanor more tentative. They start to step back, not because they've completely changed, but because your absence has made them think. Of course, not everyone will come back, but you don't need them to. What you need is to see the truth clearly, and from there keep walking calmly, clearly, without any more doubt about your place in someone else's life. And sometimes it is in that very moment that real relationships begin to take shape, not from chasing, but from choices rooted in dignity. Your absence may not make someone turn around, but it will certainly bring you closer to what is right. You don't need to be everywhere to be loved. You don't need to say everything to be understood. You just need the clarity to step back and the strength to witness everything change after that. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to chase to be held on to. And you most certainly don't need to sacrifice your self-respect just to keep someone in your life. What you need is inner clarity, the courage to withdraw when necessary, the wisdom to choose yourself over half-hearted presence from others. Don't fear silence. Don't fear distance. Don't fear being forgotten, because when you know how to stand alone without wavering, you have stepped into the realm of the truly strong. You are not here to please everyone. You are here to live in alignment with your core values, to build a life you're proud of, to be chosen by healthy relationships, not to go around begging to be acknowledged. It's time to stop trying to stay in someone else's story and begin writing the next chapter of your own life with clarity, self-respect, and a standard that is no longer negotiable. If there's only one thing I hope you do after reading this, let it be this. Choose yourself. Choose peace over repeated patterns. Choose clarity over complicated relationships. Choose silence over explaining to those who won't listen. And above all, choose to walk with your head held high, your eyes unlowered, and a heart that no longer needs permission to exist, because you are worthy, because you are enough, because simply being yourself is reason enough to be valued. I wish you, starting today, the strength to walk away from places that make you shrink, the peace to stay silent when needed, and the courage to stand alone until what truly deserves you finds its way to you. Begin today. Don't delay. Because you don't need one more person to understand you. You need yourself to understand, protect, and never abandon you again.